What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you on a Tuesday off-season episodes. Finally feeling like the off-season. I went to a basketball game last night, John.
High school?
No. Although at times it kind of looked like a high school
Oh,
game.
you saw Northwestern.
No, I saw Wisconsin. Let's be fair. Northwestern played well.
You went all the way up to Madison?
No, dude, pay attention to Chicago sports.
I don't follow it at all.
Wisconsin played in Evanston last night.
Chicago sports. That's
wow. Shots fired.
mm-hmm.
Shots fired. No,
I know Purdue's the number one team in the country.
Yeah, good for them. Enjoy that, Greg Braggs, while it lasts. I'm sure they'll still lose to Wisconsin sometime this season. No, my point was though, I saw Pat Finley at the game. It was just a Monday night. We were both commenting on like, hey, isn't it great? We're not covering like a coaching search or a GM search right now. This is nice to have a Monday night in a January.
You know that the Colts, could you imagine this? The Colts just set like a record for interviewing candidates.
Yeah. By the way, this head coaching cycle is weird. There's like no movement. They're all interviewing the same people.
They're going to interview 20 dudes and just keep Jeff Saturday.
Right. Or hire JJ Stankovitz.
Could be better than Jeff Saturday.
I mean, he keeps getting new opportunities there, so I think they should just make him the head coach.
Yeah. Rising the ranks.
Team reporter, PA guy, crushes that, head coach. Makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it makes more sense than most of the things they're doing down there. Anyway, the one thing the Bears have been involved in as we get going here, follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge and at Adam Jahns. You can read Johnsy on The Athletic, me at allchgo.com. We're going to have Jon Greenberg join us here in a little bit too to talk about his reaction to Kevin Warren, some of the stadium stuff. He's always got interesting insight on all those things, especially when, off the field stuff, business type things. Greenberg's always on top of that stuff. So we'll bring him in here in a little bit. But it was interesting that Ian Cunningham, the Bears assistant GM, decided to stay put. I mean, we're now down to multiple reports, including Jay Glazer over the weekend, that he turned down the Cardinals GM job.
I like it for the Bears, but I also like it because it's a young executive, maybe not rushing into a job. Like, how often do you see that? Like, GMs don't get second chances.
Head coaches, you got to be careful.
Do. Yes. They don't get those second opportunities. They get like higher up, not higher up, but like random titles with other teams eventually. But like, I don't think Ryan Pace will ever get another opportunity as the man in charge. Do you?
Chances are no.
Like, Atlanta's got to go on some crazy successful run, right? Justin Fields has to pan out for the Bears, and then maybe he gets that opportunity. But I think my point is valid. They don't get opportunities, second opportunities often. So
yeah, I mean,
feel good about your situation.
Because look, if the Mitch Trubisky thing doesn't happen, Ryan Pace's tenure in Chicago isn't. I mean, we've talked about all that before.
It's like saying if the Chicago Fire didn't happen.
The soccer team? That's mean too. You're just taking shots at everybody.
Everybody.
No, I know what you meant. Yeah, no, I'm not. Obviously, it did happen. But yes, but your point about Justin Fields is valid because if that works out, I don't know. It's an interesting question. Probably not. But he's still young enough and did make. I don't know. You look at the pieces on this roster, and if we're being honest, most of them are still brought in here by Ryan Pace. But to your point, I mean, Ian Cunningham being picky because you only get one shot. You want to make sure it's a good situation. I don't know right now the Cardinals are a good situation.
This is also his first time through this level of search, GM search, right? Ryan Poles went through it twice. Maybe he's learning from his good friend in this business where be patient, learn what you can learn going through it the first time, and then by next year, should be a candidate again. He'll know what he wants. And that's important too. Like inheriting Kyler Gordon in his contract. Is that the best place for you to start? I'm not sure.
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray, what did I say? Kyler Gordon.
Yeah. But maybe
I'm off my game. It's off season.
Kyler Gordon could be maybe a decent quarterback for them too. I don't know. I do think it's interesting though. Like you said, Ryan Pace has to have, or the Falcons would have to go on a run for Ryan Pace to get another opportunity. Like I think that's where teams get caught up in mistakes too often, just like getting the hot candidate from the hot team. I think it says something about Ian Cunningham that the Bears just went 3-14 and he got offered a job. I mean, that shows you they're not.
And then he turned it down.
Yeah. They're not just chasing some team's success and trying to replicate it. They're, clearly there's something about Ian Cunningham, the candidate, that really stood out. And he was a finalist in Tennessee too. So it wasn't just like one job.
So he should feel good where he stands. This is also a unique opportunity for him here. He likes working with Ryan Poles, and the Bears have the first overall pick and a bunch of cap space. And a new president, Kevin Warren.
Yeah. But,
plenty to learn from.
There's also a lot of work to do this offseason. All right, let's bring in Jon Greenberg now, of course, columnist for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at Jon_Greenberg. What's up, Jon?
What's going on, guys?
Good morning, Jon. You're putting on the morning hat?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my computer thing set up. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, still dressed in how I walked my daughter to the bus stop.
Okay.
You guys are all professional looking.
No, I mean, I'm wearing a T-shirt that really doesn't even make sense.
What's that
It
say?
says we finally made a shirt.
What the hell's that mean?
I don't know. It's
it's an inside Hoge Jahns joke here, Jon.
Oh yeah, of course I know that.
Yeah. Well, the joke was that we talked about shirts on the show for like 3 years and just never followed through.
So
And then-
I'm wearing a Steelers sweatshirt.
Wow.
That's cool.
Everybody's just taking shots at like Chicago people so far on this show. Jon, you weren't in here, but I mean, John's was just basically saying Northwestern's not a Chicago school.
I mean, it's really not. How many? I mean, it's how many local Chicagoans oh man, I love Northwestern. I mean, maybe Fishbane, or people that live literally in Evanston or Wilmette. They're like the North Shore team. It's always funny because I felt like the Tribune always used to devote a lot of resources to Northwestern because they felt that was their readership, were people that lived in the North Shore that either went there or from Winnetka or Kenilworth, right? Megan Malwicki's customer or real estate clients or their fans. I always felt the Tribune, that was classic Tribune. We really got to cover this Northwestern team.
Yeah,
sorry.
But no, they did it well. And obviously, I'm not gonna lie. There were more Wisconsin fans last night at the game than Northwestern fans.
Of course, there are no Northwestern fans.
Granted, it was a rescheduled game. It was supposed to be Saturday, so I think
this is a Big Ten. Chicago's a Big Ten city. It's, if you walk down the ball, I'm just gonna go north side here, not to, whatever, but you'll see Michigan State bars, Wisconsin bars, Michigan bars, and then maybe a couple, then maybe an Illinois bar, one or two, and no Northwestern bars. They don't exist.
No, they're in Evanston.
They're not even there.
Well, does the keg still exist? No, the keg's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, keg's gone.
See, nothing.
I honestly wouldn't know because being at the games, it's not like I was going to a bar before the game or knew where to go. Kevin Fishman would know.
You know what's funny is I took my son to a Steelers game this year for the first time, and he had never been to an NFL game, and he's 12, so it was the pandemic was a couple of years where I would have taken him, and I felt like he was old enough. And before that, the highest profile football game he'd ever been to was Ohio University at Northwestern, one of those early season ones where their students aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible. It was such a bad game and a bad atmosphere. And then I take him to a Steelers game with 70,000 people, and everyone is wearing a jersey or a jacket. You know what I mean? Everyone's so fired up. It was just blew his mind. That's what a football game's like.
Well, I guess the connection here that we can make between the Big Ten and conversation relevant to the Bears would be Kevin Warren. Jon, you were there last week.
Right.
We're still kind of discussing the fallout of Kevin Warren and some of the stadium stuff and might what might happen here, but just what was your overall reaction to what went down last week at House Hall?
Big talker. He likes to talk. Tell you what, that guy can spin a yarn. I debate on the value of like how much does it mean for like public relations for him to put on for like Bears fans to see him and not want to like, throw up, not want to like, throw the remote like when Ted Phillips talked. Because the Ted and George show was a big failure. And I don't think it helped the Bears in that sense. But how important is that really? It's not like anyone's canceling their season tickets or not watching the Bears because they didn't like Ted Phillips. So, I mean, I do still think it is a little bit of a value that when Kevin Warren talks, maybe he might inspire a little more confidence in the organization. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but, he's got a job to do. And that's like the stadium thing's number one, obviously. And then there's going to be a lot of other, little things he's got to do in the organization to maybe put people in positions to succeed. And there's definitely parts of the organization that need to improve. And he's also going to have, like we found out, like, some football power. And he might say he's just there to advise Ryan Poles, but we've seen when someone gets the power to be the president of an organization and the actual on-field product falls under their umbrella, they're going to take advantage of that. I don't care who you are. I don't care how humble someone says they are or whatever. He's going to have football power. Like, I don't think there's any. So is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? We'll have to see. But I think the fact that Ryan Poles is reporting to him and not George is kind of a big deal. And, I think Poles is probably like says he's happy about it, but I wonder if he has some questions, too, on how that's going to work.
I think it's just a matter of what George prefers. And I think this conversation is like part of the reaction to everything that happened. Like, as a columnist, like, what was your reaction, like, to the overall reaction, which seemed to be generally positive?
Yeah.
I left there thinking, like, holy moly, this guy is different than anything I ever covered here in my 10 plus years covering this team. Like, that was my 100%. Like, that was my strongest takeaway. What was your? Go ahead. Yeah.
I was kind of chuckling a little bit some of the early reactions where some reporters are like celebrating the hire. Like, what I mean, it's on our job to really celebrate the hire. Like, I don't know like what he's really going to. It's still the on-field product's the on-field product, but and finding out that he's going to actually have some, because we didn't know that at first, that he is going to have more impact maybe than we initially thought, makes it a little more important in some sense. I think so. I think he seems, we had that breakout with him and, I thought he seemed, he's very rehearsed and very like, he's going to talk about stuff, but I also thought he showed some personality and like, even some of the stuff, like when we were, I joked about the field stuff. And the stuff with the Big Ten, the parents protesting, he kind of cracked a little bit on that. I'm impressed with him. I mean, everyone likes him. Not everyone likes him. That's not true. But I feel like a lot of the NFL people seem to like him more than the college people do, which is not a surprise. And for me, as someone who's kind of anti-college sports, as beyond just watching it, I'm fine with that. Like, I don't care if a bunch of anonymous Big Ten ADs or executives didn't like him. That like means nothing to me.
Chancellors.
Right, chancellor. I mean, like, yeah, who cares?
Anonymous chancellor.
Right, like college is sports is such a racket. So like that doesn't bother me. I'm not surprised one bit that he would leave at the first. Obviously he's going to make more money, but like, and more power. So I'm not surprised he would want to leave. But yeah, I'm impressed. I think he could be good, but we'll see. I mean, like the stadium stuff, to me, it's just he's just got to get it done. He's got to help get it done because when we're saying he's he didn't like actually build the Viking Stadium. I don't think, right? He didn't lay any rebar or like.
I don't know. He said he needed to measure every piece of wood, and it's got to be 41 feet instead of 40.
So listen, if he's got an eye for detail. I mean, yeah, I think Bears fans should feel pretty good about it, but I think they should, the more important stuff is what happens this offseason.
John, what I'm interested in is because you mentioned like how he's such a big talker, and one of the things, because I've done some digging on some of the Big Ten stuff, and like the the one thing is like when he says these things, then it's like, who's going to deliver it? And so it like, sometimes the reaction would be like, well, wait, what did he say? What did he promise here? And who's going to get it done now? Right. And it's just, sometimes it's a lot. And so it's great to dream big. But what I'm very fascinated, because I had one person tell me this last week, is just like, this does not seem like a McCaskey hire. Like like they're definitely turning this over to Kevin Warren, and it's the Kevin Warren show now. And, probably in part the Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles show. But on the business side, I'm just really going to be fascinated to see like what that reaction is to like working for him and getting these things done, because it's just like, the Bears have been relatively stagnant as an organization. I think that there's certain areas where that's improved over the last like 5 years when you talk about like improving the facilities and some of the stuff like that, and even going down the Arlington Heights Road. Like there have been signs that they're moving this direction, but and they've made tremendous strides too, I think, when it comes to diversity. But I'm just very fascinated to see, like, because when Kevin Warren walks in that building for the first time, it's going to be like just a completely different atmosphere.
And I think you make a good point too about like, it sounds like maybe at the Big Ten, people were tired of him like promising big things and then they had to actually do the work. So I think there probably are some valid, from some of the anonymous people complaining, I'm sure there's some valid like criticisms there. The interesting thing about me and all the culture stuff at Hallis is like, I felt from talking to people that Hallis is actually a pretty decent place to work. I don't think everyone like loved Ted all the time, but I've heard people say it's like a nice place to work. And I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is, you're right, it wasn't a McCaskey hire, so maybe people should feel good about that. It was a search firm hire, right? I mean, that's what it is. Kevin Warren joked about like, God was going to kind of not joked, but said like God was going to kind of take care of it. He wasn't going to politic for the job. Be like, well, right, you're not going to politic for it because the search firm has your name. You're obviously like,
you're also like the most qualified candidate out there.
Right. He was super qualified and like, so like in one sense, anyone that George picks, you have to be skeptical about. And Ted Vick, right? In another sense, like it does seem like he is actually like legitimately qualified. He's worked for all these NFL teams. He knows the lay of the land. He's got experience doing the big picture stuff with the Big Ten, and he's got experience doing the stadium stuff. So seems like he's really qualified. I think it will be very interesting, like you said, though, for people that actually work at the Bears. Now they're working for him, and now they're working for someone completely different. They're used to Ted. People have stayed there a while. I mean, it's going to be different, and it's going to be, I bet you a lot of people leave through their own volition or through like getting pushed out the door for new people that he knows and he's familiar with. But I mean, it's a weird org, man. I mean, that is like you said, like they've made big strides in the past 5 years, but I remember talking to someone on the business side years ago. This was back in the kind of early to mid 2000s. And he said, he's like, when I came here, they had never bought billboards before. Like they didn't have billboard advertising plan. Like, because they're just like, we're the Bears. What do we need a billboard for? We have all our tickets sold. They like didn't get stuff like that. They were like, oh, that's a waste of money because we have our tickets sold. So that's all changed, right? House Hall's great, but like, I agree. It's going to be a huge culture shock for people working there, which is not really our problem.
What do you make of, I wonder if they'll lose that family-friendly atmosphere a little bit that's existed. I think maybe Kevin Warren brings some of that, but what do you make of like the Jim Finks comparisons? Because that was like the last outsider, have you?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good one. And it kind of reminds me of like what goes on with the White Sox. And, obviously Michael was the one that hired Arturas Carnicevis, and he brought in Mark Eversley. And, someone had brought up to me before that one of the reasons Jerry Reinsdorf would never hire outsiders and hadn't in decades is because he hired Larry Himes to run the Sox, and Larry basically told him to stay out of my way, which is the same thing that Jim Finks, told McCaskey. So that's why these owners don't do it, because they want to have some control. They want to be able to walk in every meeting, and they want to, they do own the place. And sometimes when you bring in outsiders, they don't have the deference, to that. So Kevin Warren seems a little more politically savvy, that he gets that he could probably look at George and understand how to work with him and how not to offend him. Whereas maybe executives in the 70s and 80s were a little more like rough around the edges and weren't going to deal with that. Larry Himes, same way. But that's, I've learned that lesson from covering Reinsdorf teams, that that's why he sticks to people he's known for like 30 years usually. The difference now with the Bulls is Michael runs it. So he went off script a little bit. So we'll see if the same kind of thing happens, with the Bears. But yeah, I think Kevin Warren is savvy enough to navigate that problem.
Is it weird to give underwear on Valentine's Day? No, it's weird to give bad underwear on Valentine's Day. Pamper your partner's posterior with Tommy John. When you and your favorite person are wearing Tommy John, you're that much more comfortable. So you can do everything better. From Tommy John's incredibly soft, breathable underwear to playful Valentine's Day pajamas and limited editions, 98% of men and women love Valentine's gifts from Tommy John. Thanks to dozens of comfort innovations like soft tri-blend and micromodal fabrics with 4-way stretch, Tommy John helps you feel the love all year long. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers, they have fanatics. And with over 20 million pairs sold, it's easy to see why. We love getting the gift and giving the gift of Tommy John here on Team Hoge Jahns. Also, Tommy John has become the outfit of choice on Valentine's Day as well, because every gift is backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or it's free guarantee. So get 20% off your first purchase at TommyJohn.com/athletic right now for Valentine's Day. Hurry, TommyJohn.com/athletic for 20% off. Get it by Valentine's Day at TommyJohn.com/athletic. See site for details.
You used to do some stuff in marketing. So it's part of the why you're good with
Team
this
marketing
stuff.
report.
That's right, baby.
Yeah, team marketing report. What do you think the Bears are still lacking from that standpoint? I mean, because they have made strides, and I think those are the areas that where Ted Phillips doesn't actually get some credit that he probably deserves in doing some of those things that you talked about earlier and getting the Bears, closer to this century. But where do you still feel like they can, whether it's a stadium or not, where they can make strides in that area?
Yeah, that is actually an interesting question. I mean, it's stadium stuff. I mean, Soldier Field's a mess. I mean, it's just not a great place. And I'm actually pretty anti the new stadium stuff because I think it's just a waste of money, especially for football stadiums that you don't use as much, as you would a baseball stadium or another arena. But Soldier Field does kind of suck. And I think the fan experience is not great inside the stadium. I actually don't think the outside stuff's as bad as people make it out to be. But that would help. What's interesting? As far as marketing, I had this conversation with my son because we were at the Miami airport over winter break, and there's a Miami Heat store in the airport. It's real jerseys, real T-shirts, good stuff, stuff you would buy at the arena. Why isn't there a Bears one at O'Hare? Why isn't there more Bears merch?
A Chicago Blackhawks restaurant?
Yeah, the Chicago, right, with the old frame jerseys there.
Is there only team store in Soldier Field? Because I know that one exists. You can drive to Soldier Field, park in the north garage, and
can you?
Yeah, at least you used to be able to. I've done it before, but that was a long time ago. I think it's still there. But think about how not convenient that is. When you drive down Michigan Avenue, there's a giant Blackhawk store.
Right. There is that. And the Bears have a downtown office now, which they've opened to help their sales and marketing teams. You know what I think the best thing they could do is win, actually. Really. That's seriously, that's the way. You want to sell jerseys? How about you win? How about you have exciting players? A lot of Justin Fields jerseys now. I see them, all the kids are wearing them now. For a while, you never saw kids in Bears jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see, because it's fantasy and everything else, and every kid's got red zone. And every kid likes good quarterbacks for other teams. Yeah, so how about the Bears win consistently with exciting players? That would be the best marketing they can do because they don't need any help getting on shows, right? They don't need any help getting on sports radio. They don't need any help, I don't know other ways to market. I think they're pretty active in TikTok and Twitter and crap.
Yeah, they've gotten they've expanded their efforts in that.
Yeah, and I know they hired my friend Nicole Bersani Zimmer. She came over from the Cubs. She really knows how to do Twitter and social media. So they've made some good hires. They have Larry Mayer. The kids love Larry.
Lunch with Larry, baby.
Everybody loves Lunch with Larry.
My kids are always talking about that. So no, there's how many podcasts are there? I mean, it's really only one Bears podcast, but then there's some other pretenders.
Well, that's true.
Right.
You managed to compliment and offend me at the same time. That was good.
Oh, right. Yeah, you do that other one too. There's two good podcasts. Yeah, so I think it's just winning because they're not associated with winning. And like I bring this story up to people last season, not this past one, but the one before when Fields was a rookie. I did a story on the fact that he's really the second black quarterback they've had that's played any substantial amount of time. Cordell had 7 games. Jason Campbell started once. Henry Burris started once. So he was the second one. So I wanted to talk to high school quarterbacks who are black and see is he an inspiration, that type of stuff. And the time was running out, so I did it. Talked to one kid. He's starting at Fenwick. He's now at Ball State. Give him my whole spiel of what I'm doing, and he goes, "Listen, I'm really more." He's like, "I got to be honest. I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan." From Chicago, it's from Naperville, plays at Fenwick. Aaron Rodgers fan. Of course, he's an Aaron Rodgers fan. Why wouldn't he be? If he's a quarterback, who's he going to look up to? Who is he looking? He wasn't going to look up to Mitch. Was he going to look up to Jay? No. You looked up to someone who's successful. And I think that's a major problem. That's the major problem with the Bears in my mind, is that kids in this area don't really like them. And yeah, their parents do, and they might have to watch a game with them. But if you're a kid from this area, why would you want to watch the Bears? And Justin Fields is if he's really good and this really sticks and he really improves this next year, is the antidote, to kind of that fan laziness.
Yeah.
Well, and to kind of bring this full around full circle, that's why business CEOs get involved in the football stuff sometimes, because what you're talking about, the Bears have lacked. And when you see kids walking around in Patrick Mahomes jerseys, which is an extra insult because that could have been the Bears quarterback. I mean, that's why if you're Kevin Warren, we always talk about GMs inheriting a good situation. We were just talking about Ian Cunningham at the top of the podcast, but if you're Kevin Warren, you can understand why this is an intriguing and great opportunity just as a business guy too.
Yeah. And kids know nowadays with fantasy.
Yeah.
My sons could ramble off a dozen quarterbacks. They want Justin Jefferson gear, right? Yeah. They want Cooper Kupp stuff. They want Mahomes jersey. Now they both have field stuff because they'll watch them on Sundays and their dad covers the team, but they know who's putting up the points. They know which teams are, still winning. They're smarter.
My kid wants a Robbie Gold jersey though, so I don't know what that says about.
Well, Robbie's still playing.
When your dad's a special teams coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I could go through my son's jerseys and it's all he's got a Fields, but he's got a million other ones. He had a Taylor Gabriel one because his first name's Gabriel.
Oh, I actually remember you posting that. I remember seeing that.
I showed it to Taylor. He loved it. He thought it was great.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so he's got a lot of Steelers stuff too because that's a team. When you're a kid Steelers fan, you actually buy you want to be associated with them.
Yeah. Last episode we were talking about things that Kevin Warren can take from Soldier Field and bring to Arlington Heights. We've seen a lot of different stadiums come and go here in Chicago. Comiskey's gone, Wrigley's still here. The old Chicago Stadium was across the street from the United Center.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the stadium scene here in Chicago? And then what would you take from Soldier Field and bring up, I-90?
Well, it's funny. I've only been to one Bears game as a fan in my life. I think, don't people say the views are pretty good, right? Because it's small.
Yeah, they're not bad. Yeah.
People say the views. Here's a quick funny story. The one time I went to a Bears game as a fan, I was in grad school in fall 2006. So the Bears Super Bowl season. And one of my grad school classmates was high school teammates with Jason McKee. And we got Jason's tickets that game. It was the coldest game of the year as well against Minnesota.
It's Hoge's boss.
Hoge's boss. You can tell your boss I watched with Jason McKee. I watched in Jason's seats. His buddy was this guy was a couple years younger, played in high school with him in Florida, went and ran track at Dartmouth. And he was this really he kind of nerdy looking guy, but an unbelievable athlete. And he was friends with McKee. So I watched with him. But yeah, I think the seats are good. Make sure you have good sight lines. Make sure the actual fan seating is the thing. I know when you build stadiums, you build them for luxury suites because that's where the money is, and club seating. Make sure there's still a lot of that for the fans. And the interesting thing to me is going to be what they do with the field, the actual field. And I think you guys were both there, right? When I was asking Ted about that.
Yeah, you're talking about the actual playing surface. The grass. Yes. Yeah.
It was rated for, it was a big story in The Athletic about it. The fact that players hate this turf and they hate the combo turf, like at the Meadowlands and places like that. And I asked Ted if they're going to roll grass out and roll it in and out. And he said probably not, which makes sense because we don't really have the warm climate here to do that like they do in Arizona or like where else do they do it?
I think Vegas. I think the Raiders.
Oh, you're right, Raiders. But
the Raiders
they do it in England. They do it at I think Tottenham.
Tottenham. Yeah,
right?
they have.
They play. They do it. So I mean, the Bears. It would be really Bears though. And you guys have to agree with this. Like they were the ones getting ripped for not going to turf. And they would say like, no, our studies show the players want grass. And, everyone rips them, and it's actually they were right. Players do want grass.
They want nice grass though, not shitty grass.
Correct. Grass is grass in their mind, but right, they want nice grass. So, but they were on the right side of that existential argument.
Yeah.
And now everyone else is going to go to grass, and the Bears are going to go to turf, and so I think that'll be funny.
The quarterback's on record though as saying he likes the turf.
Yeah, but he's also young. He doesn't know. Like seriously, he's played 2 years in the NFL. Yeah. Like I don't think he quite gets it yet. He still has his youth.
Well, he's also, I think that's what he's used to playing on the high school level. Ohio State has, they don't have grass, they have turf. And then, I guess Soldier Field is his first real grass experience, but I think he likes going to Minnesota and Detroit.
Sure. Well, he's fast.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to, Hoge, have you ever talked to the Sod Father about this?
About turf versus grass specifically?
And Soldier Field?
I've a little bit on Soldier Field, but yeah.
He won't talk on the record about it because he doesn't want to like betray the groundskeeper, like, you know what I mean? You're right, the circle of trust. But he's had some interesting stories, and not about the actual, he like defends whoever the groundskeeper is.
Kenny Marak.
Right. His problem is more with just like the bureaucracy behind. Well, it's not just the city, it's the city and the Bears, and how they fight with each other.
Yeah.
But the Sod Father, Sully and I talked to him off the record last year about this a little bit, and he was pretty interesting. So that's going to be a big story, though. Watch out when the stadium comes. It'll be interesting. We don't know who the hell is going to be playing for the Bears by the time they build this fantasy stadium.
Also, we don't know what's going to happen with what you're talking about with this turf versus grass war. I mean, this thing's going to be 7-8 years down the line. What's that whole conversation going to be? And we know that the Meadowlands, I think one of the players spilled the beans that they're going to keep artificial, but it's a different type of turf. So that's just something. It's a good point you bring up, and something we'll have to keep track of.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think is the big thing besides like? What do you think they need to do with the new stadium, or just in general, marketing wise? I'm curious. You guys are more plugged into that than me.
Well, I think you nailed it. You got to be successful. Part of the Bears' old, to go back to your billboard arguments, now that, Justin Fields is sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, or he's got the deal with Dunkin' Donuts. Mm-hmm. You see those billboards all the time now. But, like, I get what they're saying. Why spend money when we're already making money? It's a bit archaic in thinking, but I understand at least why they thought that. It's winning. It really is. Like you mentioned your Steelers experiences, like the ambiance of the games. Like it's
100%.
Like winning creates all that. Like I just think about like the Blackhawks, of the 2010, 2013, 2015. Like they created their own things because of what happened on the actual ice. You need a better product, and then it sells itself. That's how I think things need to unfold, and then maybe why Kevin Warren will be good for Ryan Poles.
And here's a good bit of marketing. I was at the Blackhawks game the other day, and I was watching like their between period shows in the sports book, and Lucas Patrick was a guest. How about that? Mm-hmm. He was on the he's bringing that Big Bears Lucas Patrick audience over to the Blackhawks.
That's big.
On Bulls night for some reason.
Wow, I guess you get all the teams.
A Bears guest at the Blackhawks game on Bulls night.
On Bulls night.
Correct. Well, they when they scheduled Bulls night, they forgot that they were playing in France, so like none of the players were going to show up because they were still resting. So they got Bill Wennington to show up and like the love of Bulls.
Scheduled Bulls night while the team's in France.
Well, no, they were back, but it was like
okay.
The players wanted to go because they were like jet lagged.
Yeah.
They couldn't get him back, so like Bill Wennington was there though. I saw him.
John, do you think there's any chance that the Bears end up staying in the city?
No, because I don't know of any other stadium locations, right? I mean, I always thought, here's my idea, and this is my idea during like when it was coming out, was like the city should sell the Bears Soldier Field. Like, why do they want it? Like, and people are like, no, Park District rules and stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, I totally get that. There's a lot of logistical hoops. But one thing the pandemic showed us is that you can actually do things you thought previously were impossible. You can change things on the fly. You can change the rules. Why not just sell them the stadium? Then they can develop it any way they want. But the issue, obviously, is there's just not enough space. You're not going to sell them like the planetarium, right? You're not going to sell them the Field Museum. There just isn't enough space. And as critical as I think they should stay in the city, I'm not like Mark Carman levels of asking about it, but I like the idea of all the teams playing in the city. I think it's cool. I don't think people that complain about traffic and other things are going to find some panacea out in the suburbs. Because if you ever try driving out to like Arlington Heights, let's say when they have a Thursday night game, how easy do you think it's going to be to get from the city or wherever other suburbs that aren't close to that stadium? It's going to be an absolute nightmare. So I don't think people are going to find these like it's going to be a pleasure cruise getting in and out of Arlington Park with 70,000 people. But I can totally understand. Listen, this should have happened in the 70s, right? Yeah. They played at Wrigley Field for 50 years. They're the first. I wrote this the other day, and I can't stress it enough. You are the first NFL franchise. It is 2023, and you're still talking about your own stadium.
Yeah, that's wild.
It is. And people are like, well, it was their only business. They don't, they're not rich otherwise. But like a lot of other NFL teams were in that same boat back then, and they figured it out.
Yeah, the team that you're, like wearing right now, right? The Steelers, the family-owned team.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
the Giants.
They played in Three Rivers until 2001. And Three Rivers was not great, and they weren't making any money. Bears have a much better lease than the Steelers did with the county and the city for Three Rivers. I'll tell you that. But that's when the Steelers obviously exploded revenue-wise, is when they built a new stadium. But yeah, you could listen. You try to tell me in the 70s, Hallis couldn't find some money to build a stadium on the west side, south side. Give me a break. It's just like they had no vision. He had vision as a football guy, the most vision of anyone, but he never had vision as a businessman. And that's what doomed the Bears to be in this position. It's not Lori Lightfoot's fault that this is still an ongoing thing. Like, people want to blame her. It's not her fault. It's the McCaskey's fault. And it's the city's fault for not figuring out a better solution 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And then 20 years ago, the same thing. They put a spaceship on top. On top of a landmark, then they lose the landmark status. What are you going to do?
Well, and that's why I think the only scenario in which they can stay in the city is if they do what you said, and that's they actually let the Bears own the land. And even then, though, to your point, is it enough land? It's going to cost more money, and it's less land. So
you got to almost tear down the stadium and rebuild it.
Yeah.
That's it's just they painted themselves into a corner. And I don't like the idea of Arlington Heights, but it's doable. Football's the one, team you can put them out in the suburbs. It's not really that big of a deal. But I said, for the fans that think it's going to be easy, I would advise you to think again. Look at, I saw people tweeting the other day about the Niners stadium, how it was like traffic was like, took people like 2-3 hours to get in and out.
It's right next door to an amusement park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. It's a bad location.
I went for that. I was there. Were you guys there? Or John, you were probably there for the first regular season game there because it was Bears Niners. You remember that?
Yeah. That was.
Yeah.
Were you there?
I was there too.
Kaepernick game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about that.
No, it wasn't. That was
a Candlestick.
That was the other stadium.
The one that was the Kyle Fuller game. He had a couple of interceptions in that game.
Right.
and the Bears won.
Right. It was like the end of the Kaepernick era. It's basically like that was like the beginning of the end is when things got bad with Harbaugh. That season was bad for them. But I remember that one, though. I drove from downtown San Francisco. I bought the Ghostface Iron Man CD at Amoeba Music in Haight-Ashbury because I rented a car. And I actually got from downtown to the stadium in the running time of that album, which is under an hour. So I was really proud of myself.
I think the lesson
I think
there
that
is
was
that
an anomaly.
fans will travel for the
100%.
to watch. They'll sit in traffic. They'll deal with BS. They'll deal with an amusement park emptying as they wait to get into the same lots. They'll put
also,
up with shit.
I just I'm not too concerned about the traffic thing.
It won't bother us.
Driving to Soldier Field on a Thursday right now is a nightmare. Yeah, I got to leave my house at 1, or I'm going to sit there in traffic for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's Chicago. The traffic's going to suck wherever the stadium is.
It's a big city. It's a big city in a big area. There's always going to be traffic. You got to find your secret shortcuts and whatever. But I just say, everyone talks about it's going to be a solution. That's not the solution. The solution is the Bears can possibly, make more money and a bigger experience. And the other thing for fans, just to, I don't want to hear. I want to save people's tweets complaining about Soldier Field and then see what happens when they see the ticket prices for a new stadium in the suburbs, because they're going to be astronomical. They're not astronomical, but they'll be a lot. You're going to be paying a lot. So, I just hope fans know they're the ones paying for this.
John, appreciate the insight. Enjoy having you on. I want to make sure all our listeners are following you at Jon_Greenberg. You get all kinds of stuff on the stadium and snarky media tweets at all times too.
Yeah, I love you on this podcast, Hoge. I don't listen to the other one. Sorry.
Jesus. Comments like that.
Throwing haymakers on the way out.
Yeah. Come on.
Thanks, John.
Give Mark Carman love.
He kind of did.
Or maybe I'm the problem on that show. I probably am. I'm always a problem. It's all a problem, as a former coach would say. All right. We got to get out of here speaking of that, because there's other shows to do and other things to do in life. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Johns, Reed, Johnsy, Greenberg, Fishbane, Pompey, the whole crew on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. You can find me at all CHGO. And we do a show every day at noon. And I guarantee you Greenberg watches more than he says. So check that out.
We'll make fun of him.
Yeah.
And then you'll know.
Right. So something tells me that one's not going to make his list of oh, he does a survey, though. His thing's a survey.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas the Sun Times thing last week was just one guy's rankings.
Correct. Yes. Jeff Agris.
Which, speaking of Mark Carman, his yearly bit of being number 21 on the list is always hilarious. 21 or 221. You never know.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of here. Obvious Shirts is the place to go for all the merch. Appreciate the support from everyone. As I like to say, tell a friend. We're not going anywhere. We're plugging through the offseason. We'll be back Thursday, actually, with more. We'll talk a little bit about the games coming up this weekend. And
football-y show.
Yeah, and maybe get into some free agency. We got a lot of big plans coming up, so make sure you are subscribed, telling your Bears fans all about it. We'll be here for you, Hoge and Jahns, and we'll talk to you in a couple days.
See ya.